Hello everyone, I'm Dr. Mariam Al Mansouri from Mommy and Me. Our guest today is Miss Amna, mental health counselor. And the topic of today's podcast is mental health matters. Hello Amna, and welcome to Mommy and Me podcast.
Thank you so much, Dr. Mariam.
So, mental health matters. This is a very important, interesting topic. And I think that lots of mothers spend time and money visiting their obstetricians to check on their well-being of their baby and their own well-being.
Correct.
But people rarely talk about mental health, whether during pregnancy or after labor. So, what do you think about that?
There's almost a shame in sharing our experiences as what we felt like when we during our either postpartum or prior to that, and sharing our experiences with other moms. It's almost like you see those Instagram moms who have these perfect pictures. As soon as they deliver, they're out there, they have these gorgeous gowns, they're holding their baby, and everything just seems perfect. So when people see things like that, like women like us or younger than us, when they haven't experienced a delivery or a pregnancy, they just see that and they assume that, wow, that's it's just a matter of a push, and then that's it, right? And then they don't actually see how much more there is to that. There is so much more to that than just is on the surface. And I think that is why a lot of people don't talk about mental health, because we don't see it. We've never heard it. Our mothers never shared it. Our grandmothers never said anything about it. And they had, many, many kids at the same time. So, I mean, if they could do it, what's wrong with us? Why can't we?
Yeah. So I think, there are lots of, mothers needs to know that whether they're trying to conceive or they're pregnant, their body go through a lot of changes.
Correct.
And, sometimes it might be difficult to understand how they feel or why do they feel in this particular way. So as we talked before, that it's quite important to get, help as soon as you think you might need it.
Correct.
As soon as you think you might or not be ready to conceive. As soon as you're pregnant, speak to your husband, have this discussion whether you are actually physically and mentally ready to have the baby. A pregnant woman, as we've just talked, they go through lots of hormonal changes, and I think they need a lot of support. So why do you think it's important to take care of our mental health as pregnant mothers?
The number one thing, of course, the happier the mother is, the happier the child will be. But let's go back. Let's go a little bit behind. So prior to us even starting the conceiving process, as soon as you get married, you have your peers, you have your parents, your mom, everybody else asking you when is it happening? When is it happening? A lot of women these days aren't necessarily ready to immediately have a child. And it takes a lot of, a lot of physical, of course, but of course a lot of mental. It's a mental challenge. You say, you have to talk yourself into it, say, okay, this is what I can do. You have to also remember that a lot of moms don't believe that most of us have this notion that, are we actually going to be good mothers? Okay, we'll have the child, that's all right, but then are we actually going to step up to this challenge of being a mother? I think that is something that a lot of women, struggle with. And also we have to remember that a lot of women don't immediately conceive. For whatever reasons, it takes them some time, or they might just need that time. And then there's so much pressure building up. It's almost like peer pressure, right? Like everybody's having kids, your mom's asking about it, your husband's mom is asking about it, so what do we do now? And so there's a lot of stress involved with this. Again, like you mentioned, the changes in hormones intensifies during the process, whether we are pregnant or we're trying to conceive. It's a matter of are we taking any medications during this time to get pregnant? So a lot of those things really affect how women actually how their mental health is affected during this time. And if we're not able to take care of our mental at this time specifically, this could lead, again, this could lead to having anxiety, this could lead to having postpartum depression, it could lead to quite a few changes that we don't necessarily want or we don't necessarily expect to have during our delivery or after
So
delivery.
how common is, postpartum depression? How common is it?
So studies say that 1 in 7 women can experience postpartum depression.
Okay, it's a very high number.
That is.
1 in 7. Okay. So, so you've already mentioned that mothers that are exposed to stress of any sort, whether it's peer stress, whether it's physical stress, they are more likely to develop some sort of a depression or anxiety, unwanted depression and anxiety. Any other risk factors that would might increase the chances of her getting a depression?
Of course. So again, depression is, there's no specific, there's no, this is, if you do all of these, this is, you're going to get depression. It's more of like, for example, like we spoke before, had you had stress before? Had you had a mental illness before? Had you had depression before? Of course, it will be twofold, threefold more than what it was previously. If, for example, you have a child, but you don't have the support system, they say it takes a village. If you don't have that, if you're not getting sleep, lack of sleep, you're not having your meals on time. So these really, really small things that we don't even consider. We say, you know what, she just had a child, she should be really happy. I mean, why is she crying? Why is she upset? But a lot of people don't see that there's so many changes in the routine, in your regular routine. Moms also don't get a lot of exercise during this time. So there's nothing happening. It's more of almost like a routine, constant thing. Other things to remember is also if you're in any form of abuse. So it could be emotional abuse, physical abuse from the husband, or from wherever she's staying in her environment. That could also alleviate depression at some point.
I was reading the other day that pregnant women, are higher risk of being abused by their husbands.
Right.
Something that I cannot really understand, and I don't know. I was surprised when I read that.
Yeah.
So yes, pregnant women may be abused, whether that is physically or verbally, or so. Yeah, we have to watch out for that.
Definitely, and there was a study, I think somewhere, which I'm not necessarily sure. I cannot tell you the exact specifics, but it said that a lot of times during soccer games, a lot of European or the men, when they get really upset that their team has lost
their game.
Yeah, they hit their wives because that's it's and that she doesn't have to be pregnant for that, but it's just a matter of I'm just giving you an understanding of how things actually work out. That sometimes it's just you're upset about something and then you take it out on something else. So it's not specifically for pregnant women, but I think if there are difficulties in the relationship from the beginning, this would definitely not help.
I heard, and I still do hear that, get pregnant, get your first baby, and, your husband will be different. He'll be more responsive. He'll be more of a better father, and a better husband. So what do you think?
I personally do not think that should be a must. Again, it depends on the man. Right?
Yeah.
If the man is actually willing to be, because again, a lot of men want to be fathers. Let's be honest. The whole point of them getting married is because they want a family. They have good intentions, but when they start to notice that the responsibilities are so much more than just holding a very nice and clean baby, and it has to do a lot with cleaning diapers and feeding and burping, because burping is a big challenge. Yes, and the tantrums. They are not able to deal with so many of those things only because maybe they haven't seen or didn't have a very good example of what it was like to be, a good father. Or maybe you could come from a very good family and a very good father, but just you are unable to have a control over your emotions. And, things are very different. And also the dynamics between the husband and wife change quite a bit after they have the baby.
Yeah. So when we talk about depression, some mothers would say, I just had like baby blues, and others would say, no, that's depression. So how can we tell?
So the most important thing is the time frame or the timeline between them. Usually baby blues start anywhere between the start, when you just deliver, all the way to 2 weeks. So we're always assuming everything 2 weeks and beyond. Depression is always measured 2 weeks and beyond. If it continues for over 2 weeks, and so when we say continuous, so for example, you have that constant crying, you're really upset, it's not for a few hours, but it's this constant feeling of like you really feel this, this need, or you feel really tired, you feel your appetite has changed quite a bit. You're not eating. You feel a disconnect. Sometimes you feel a disconnect with your child, not necessarily all the time. And then you know that, okay, this is I mean, we know. Women always have a gut instinct. We always know that something is really, really wrong. It's more than your usual baby blues, which is just, your upsetness sometimes. And, again, the changing hormones with estrogen change quite a bit. And it also elevates whatever mental health difficulties we have. So if you actually feel that it's gone beyond 2 weeks, at this point you are, suffering quite a bit, and then you know that this is the time you need to go head out, meet a psychologist, meet your counselor, and figure out what's happening.
Okay, so um, let's say that a woman is going through a hard time, or after delivery, as you mentioned, there is lack of sleep. Yeah, I don't know if you have your proper life activities, like for example, even a shower. You can't have a peaceful shower.
Yeah.
So how can family support? How can the husband be of support?
So of course, taking turns, making sure that, I understand that, the feeding part is more of the mother's thing. But for example, if she can perhaps, pump and leave the milk outside, and he can maybe do the night shift so she can get that sleep. Maybe have someone over. Some people right now, they hire night nurses so that they can take over the night part, so at least the mother can get that sleep. Other than that, you can have family members over. Again, pregnant women or women who just delivered don't want a crowd. But again, cooking meals, for example, because if you are in a single household where you're the only, almost like you have to do the cooking, you have to do the cleaning, but you also have to take care of the baby, that just makes everything so much more difficult. So had you had someone for doing some of these chores, that would be really helpful. Also, small things like going for a massage, yeah, taking a shower, going for a walk. Those things really help, because those are very small luxuries for a new mom.
Yeah.
The luxuries that she cannot have at that moment. So if she's able to have access to that, then of course, she'd feel much better.
And I always, during my consultations with some, mothers, I always tell them that when you come back, after your 1 hour massage or like 30 minutes jog, then you come happier.
Correct.
You come, missing your baby. You come, and you deliver the best, because you always cannot give from an empty cup. So you have to look after yourself. Yeah?
Yes, absolutely.
So as you mentioned earlier, that lots of things change when the baby arrives. So if you can tell us a little bit about, the husband-wife dynamics, and how can, so we agree that, make sure that everything is perfect before, more perfect, close to perfect.
Never be perfect. It will
Yeah.
never be perfect.
So, I mean, that everything seems to be well between, the couple before having the baby. And then when the baby arrives, how can they still have date nights? How can they do what they used to do before having the baby?
So of course, at the very start, there is a specific period that the husband and wife have to go through. Maybe with intimacy. So again, when we're referring to intimacy, we're not referring to the whole deed, but we're referring to intimacy where you're holding hands, you're hugging each other, you're cuddling each other. You have that bonding time with yourself, with the baby, of course, as well. But you have amongst each other. A lot of times, what happens is when we have a child, there's almost a disconnect, because the husband says, "Well, it's her thing. Why am I even there? She's the one who's feeding. She's the one who's taking care of the child. Why must I even be there? Let me go out and hang out with my guy friends, for example." Or so again, we're not trying to make the husband be the bad guy here, but that's usually what happens, typical Asian families. But what necessarily needs to happen is that there must still be that intimacy. There must still be that understanding that, okay, let's take turns. Okay, if you're doing the dishes today, if you're doing the feeding, I'll do the dishes, or vice versa. Or if they actually have help at home, which a lot of Middle Eastern families right now have, nannies. So I mean, they can still have that, put the child to bed, and then go out, have your date night, go for a dinner. Because again, with our little child, it's more of the child is always with you, almost hugging you all the time, right? Because you're trying to feed it. So this will be almost like, even for the mother, will be almost an escape for a little while. So she would be able to have this, again, part of luxuries, right? Luxuries being a first time mom or second time mom, regardless. That I think that is really important. Sometimes we don't have nannies, of course, and then that's completely okay. Maybe having the mother over, a sibling over who can, just look after the baby for maybe even an hour or two, so they can just go out. And again, a date night doesn't have to be something, extremely extravagant. Like, go really like simple. It could even be in your own dining room, just some candles, and just have nice ambience and just have a meal together. Watch some TV, right? It could be anything.
And the weather's getting better now, so
Oh
maybe
my
a
God,
walk by the beach.
yeah, that for sure.
Yeah. So how can, having a healthy husband-wife relationship, how can this reflect on the well-being of the baby?
So of course, at the beginning, the child is not aware of anything, right? So the first 2 years of the child is probably just goes by. But the child seeing the mom and dad having this really good relationship, has an understanding of what relationships are like, and has a better understanding of what they can expect. Because the more nurture and the more love you give to the child, the more the child is, giving back. Because idealistically, the mother and father are the first source of educational knowledge for any child. So you pick up quite a bit from your mom and dad. And if you see that they have beautiful dynamics, I mean, initially you won't see much, but eventually you do see quite a bit. You see when the kids are actually toddlers, they know that, mom and dad, we have to go here, mom and dad have their alone time, mom and dad have, dinners together with the children, that really makes an impact. Versus, we have no meals together. We are in separate rooms. We are not functioning together, we're not talking to each other. The child actually feels that and feels what is wrong. We have to also remember a lot of children feel really bad, and they sometimes can take the blame for it. They say, maybe things got worse when I came in this picture. So again, this is of essence to have a really good relationship prior to or with the child. Either or, you have to have a really good relationship in order to have a child. It's almost like if the foundation is really good, the building is really strong.
Yeah. So I just want to, ask you a question, because I think lots of people, even when they try to book with our psychologist or our counselor
Correct,
here at
yeah.
Mommy and Me, they're always worried about medications and psychiatrists. I think people in this part of the world are still not fully aware of the difference. I mean, what can you do as a counselor versus a psychiatrist? If you can just tell me briefly.
So psychiatrists will give you, they are more, they will give you medications. And you usually go to them if you have depression or you have an anxiety that is uncontrollable. You would go to them in order for you to take medications, and then they might do some talk therapy with you, but not necessarily a job requirement. Versus a counselor where you go in, you have conversations like you and I are having. It's almost like we try to make it two-way, but it's usually a one-way. We hear you quite a bit. We try to help you through, guide you through what you can do, find solutions for you, and then, well, not we find, but both of us come together and find a solution for you. So a lot of what we do is more of we hold your hand and then take you through the entire process. Versus psychiatrists, which probably do the same thing but also give you medications, and that will help control what you're feeling. Because again, with postpartum depression, there's a lot of feelings of sadness, guilt, loneliness, sometimes even wanting to end life. And talk therapy can't really help you with that, but medications can help you.
So let's say that you get a client who is, have some of the symptoms, and you might think that, counseling is not enough. Then we can always refer her to psychiatry.
Yes, of course. And also there's a depression test that she can do. So once she's able to complete the depression test, we know where she stands, and then of course we will, give her the right recommendations of what is required.
Okay. Is there anything that you would like to add?
I just like to add that, and I always say this to everybody, I think the biggest project that we'll ever work on is ourselves. And I think it's really important to really look into our mental being, because whatever we feel reflects out, to people, to those around us. So yeah, just that, you have to really want to be happy, and to actually feel happy, you need to take care of yourself.
Okay, that's a very important advice, especially for mothers,
Correct.
because they tend to forget themselves, take care of their children and forget themselves. So thank you for being here with us today.
you very
It
much for
was
having me.
really, really nice talking to you.
Very amazing talking to you too.
Thanks. Thank you for watching. If you liked our video, don't forget to subscribe.